Bibliophiles of the Internet. My name is Adriana and 'tis the season for November wrap-ups, so today I will be talking with you about all of the amazing books that I read in November. In total, I read 18 books, but I won't be talking about every single one of them because some of them were for school and they served their academic purpose and they were just okay and I don't really want to talk about them. But that being said, let's get started. The first book I completed in November was The Complete Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. I did have to read this book for school. It was for my graphic novel seminar because this is a very well-known graphic memoir. As the term graphic memoir implies, this is Marjane's personal history of growing up in Iran and how all of that culture and tradition affected her growing up. Marjane had a pretty unique childhood because when she was growing up there was a lot of war and revolution and violence going on. And like I said, it's all about her growing up in that environment and how that affected her and how that affected the direction of her life. I really enjoyed this graphic memoir. I loved Marjane Satrapi's art style and I really loved the honesty that was in the memories she allowed us to see. My lovely friend Lindsay from Lindsay's Library has an amazing book review on Persepolis and I will link that down below because she very eloquently states basically everything I felt about this book. But as I said at the beginning, I really enjoyed this graphic memoir and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. On a very different note, the next things that I read were the last 3 volumes of Oran High School Host Club by Bisco Hattori. For those of you who don't know, Oran High School Host Club is a wacky, insane, romantic comedy manga series. The characters are ridiculous and intentionally outrageous and over the top. It's an amazing parody and I loved every single second of it. I thought the way the series ended was very true to the voice and the tone of the series overall, and I really enjoyed it. I really don't think it could have ended any other way. Oran is one of my all-time favorite manga and anime series, and I very highly recommend it if you haven't read it or watched it yet because it's just hilarious, so much fun, and very highly enjoyable. The next book that I read was for school, and that was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This book debuted earlier this year, and it's about a Chinese-American family in 1970s Ohio. It's about the Lee family, and the middle child, Lydia, has just died a very mysterious and sudden death. And her death really destroys the delicate balance that was holding this family together. Celeste Ng's prose is absolutely gorgeous. There's a very poetic tone to the way that she's written this book. All of the words really flow, and she has a really great knack for creating these images that just kind of stick in your mind. And you really get a lot of depth about each character because the narrator in this story is omniscient. So the perspective is always bouncing around from one character to the next, and you really get to hear everyone's backstories, and I just think it's great. I could go on talking about this book forever, but you really, really need to read it, and I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it's definitely one of the standout novels that I've read in 2014. The next book that I read was completely different from Everything I Never Told You, but it was just as amazing. So I went from one great book to another great book, and I won't keep you in suspense. That was Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. This book is about a character who we will refer to in this synopsis as Breck. She is, stay with me here, she is a spaceship. She has the ability to break herself off into many different human sections. So she can be present in many different bodies, in many different places, all at the same time. And when she's in her human sections, she retains that artificial intelligence that comes with being a spaceship. So Breck is a military spaceship, and like I said, she can break off into many different human sections, and one of those sections goes rogue. And on top of that, the galactic empire in which she lives is in political turmoil and unrest, which kind of contributes to the fact that one of her sections went rogue. This section wants revenge on the lord of this galactic empire that I mentioned, and I don't even know what else to say. It was so amazing how Anne Leckie was able to write a character who, like I said, can be present in many different places, many different planets, and she has all these different bodies, and she has this artificial intelligence. How she ever wrote that voice, I have no idea. It's phenomenal work, without a doubt, and this is not one of those books that you can just marathon through. You really have to take your time with it and make sure you understand everything every step of the way. But the world and the galaxy that Ann Leckie has created and all of the characters are all just, I don't even have words. They're beyond words. But I'm gonna stop myself here and just say that I gave Ancillary Justice 4.5 out of 5 stars. This month I also read the next 2 books in the Mediator series by Meg Cabot. As I explained in my last wrap-up, this is a YA paranormal series, and the main character, Suze, is a mediator, which means she can see and interact with the spirits of the dead. So they often appear to her and they need her to do something for her. They have unfinished business, which is keeping them from moving on to the next stage in the afterlife. You all know that I love Meg Cabot. She is just the light of my life. I love her so much. She's one of my huge writing inspirations, and I love her writing style in this series. It's so fun and quirky and hilarious. These 2 books were definitely 2 of my favorite installments in the series thus far. I really love the direction that the series is going in, and I think these 2 volumes really do set up the stage for the last 2 books in the series to be just crazy and insane and awesome. Needless to say, I was very pleased with these next 2 installments in the series, and I gave them both 4 stars apiece. As many of you know, I am the co-moderator of the Booktube Manga Club. I will leave a link to our Goodreads page in the description down below. Feel free to check it out and join us, and if you want to be one of the first people to know what our December read-along will be, then that's the place to go. For November, we decided to read food manga because Bree and I are both American, and in November it's all about Thanksgiving. So the series we decided to try was Food Wars, also known as Shokugeki no Soma by Yuto Tsukuda. Basically, this series is about a character named Soma, whose father owns a family-run restaurant. Soma wants to be the greatest chef who ever lived. He wants to excel beyond his father's culinary abilities, and so to do that, his father sends him to this extremely elite culinary school. Don't get me wrong, I loved the food aspects of this manga so much. All of the cooking scenes were really badass, and I love how the main character Soma kind of treated every single dish like a challenge or a battle. What I really didn't like about this story was how needlessly sexual it was. There is a lot of male-targeted fan service. We all know what it is, and it's not pleasant. So the sexual fan service was definitely one of my biggest complaints with this series, but I also think there were aspects of it that could have been better. So I gave the first volume of Food Wars 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was one that I checked out of my library on a whim, and that was He Forgot to Say Goodbye by Benjamin Alire Sáenz. It's about 2 very different characters. One of them is named Ramiro and the other one is named Jake. As you might be able to tell by their names alone, Ramiro is a Mexican American and Jake would probably refer to himself as just a white guy. They live in the same town. The schools that they go to are very close to one another, and they actually have a lot in common because both of them were abandoned by their fathers, but they lead very different lives. I am in love with Benjamin Alire Sáenz. I mean, he is just one of my authors. I will read anything he has ever written. Everything that he does is amazing and it resonates with me, and I think it's so honest, and to me he's just one of those authors that really gets it. I really enjoyed this book, and I liked how it was about these characters who were very lost and they're coming to terms with their life, and both of them are kind of on the brink of adulthood, and it's very interesting to see how they deal with that because they both deal in very, very different ways. I love how this book is really an exploration of culture because, like I said, these 2 guys live in the same place, but they live such different lives, and that's because one of them is Mexican American and the other one is just American. And it's really interesting to see how their roots and their ethnicity really affects their identity and really affects their opportunities. In the end, I gave He Forgot to Say Goodbye 4 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book that I read in November was The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan, which is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series. And this book introduces us to a new cast cast of characters, namely Jason, who wakes up on a bus and he has no memory of who he is or who are the people around him. He doesn't know where he is, where he came from. But it's extremely apparent that he is a very powerful demigod. And on top of that, Percy Jackson himself has gone missing. So there's a lot of unknowns in this book. It's a really great epic mystery and adventure story. I don't know if I can adequately articulate how much I enjoyed reading this book. What I thought was really smart about The Lost Hero was that Rick Riordan did incorporate a lot of the original characters from the Percy Jackson series, but he let them take a back seat because they're already established. We already like them. And he really put Leo, Piper, and Jason in the forefront and allowed us to understand who they are as characters and where they're coming from and some of their backstory. I would be very hard pressed to name a favorite, especially of the three heroes that are in this book, because I really did love them all. Also, I really love the complexity that this series starts off with right off the bat. The characters are all interesting and complex, and the conflicts that they have to deal with are so much bigger than them. The conflicts are epic in scale. So I had a blast reading The Lost Hero, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said at the beginning of this video, those were not all of the books that I read this month, but those were all of the books that I wanted to discuss with you all today. So in the comments down below, please feel free to tell me if you've read any of the books that I've read, and also don't forget to tell me what was your favorite book that you read in November, and what are you looking forward to reading in December. So that's it for this wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!